Okay, we're going to talk about the iris and how to get the textures of the iris. First thing I want to do is I'm going to color in this pupil, which I know when I look at this, this is my darkest dark. When I look at all the other relationships of the other values I'm seeing, this is definitely my darkest dark. So I'm going to, let's see, get a 6B pencil, and I'm going to go ahead and just start shading that in. And I can push really hard into this paper, changing my directions. I had a lot of people turn in stuff, and I told you guys that you need to change your directions when you're shading. And what I mean by that is, I'm just going to go off to the side over here, that you're not just shading, oops, you don't see that, you're not just shading one direction, like I'm just shading horizontally. I want to keep changing my direction. So remember, there's tooth in the paper, and the more times I change my direction, so I'm not just shading horizontally, I'm also shading vertically and diagonally. The more directions I change, the more smoother my shading is going to be. Or another way to go about doing it is going into small overlapping circles. That does the same thing to get that really, really smooth shade. You don't want it to look scratchy, like how I kind of got it scratchy here on the edges. And like I would go over this again and again and again until I get it smooth. So anyways, change your directions. Going back to the iris. Okay, let's see, and I got this tricky highlight happening here in the pupil. So I'm observing it, breaking it up into shapes. Like I can see a little triangle right here. Let's see, it's an interesting photograph of an eye. Let's see, and this highlight here on the eye, it's not the whitest white compared to this area over here. So I'm probably going to knock it down a notch. And probably also come back to it at some point. Alright, so the iris part. So this is an interesting texture, and a lot of people's eyes, you know, they vary differently. Something I do to start this off, usually the outside of the eye, everyone is a little bit darker. So I'm going to come in, get it really dark here, and let it lighten up. Dark on the edge, lighten it up. I'm going to place down a value first to get the iris before I think about the texture. So I'm analyzing the values. How dark is it here? How light do I need to get in general? Right now I'm going to kind of ignore all these highlights a bit. Well, until I get to this one here, but okay. And I'm kind of rough about it. And I'm also kind of noticing that I have a nice cast shadow that's happening on the top of the eye. Usually you're going to see a cast shadow just from the eyelashes casting a shadow onto the eyeball. Let's see what to do here. Here, this area is not as dark. I'm just going to take it in a value right now. Okay. Okay, once I got down a value, I'm going to take my pink pearl eraser. I'm going to think about how all these little lines kind of come out like rays in the sun. I'm just going to go ahead and do this back and forth, get that texture. Now I'm going to be moving back and forth a lot. It's just not one mark, and I'm done. Let's see, I lost my pencil. There it is. Then I'm going to come back with the pencil, make the textures that I'm looking for. Come back with the eraser, do the same thing. So it's just a back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until that texture starts coming along. Like, it's starting to look pretty good down here. The rest of it's pretty messy. What am I doing on time? I need to clean up my edges. They're kind of rough right now, that sharp edge. Oh, kind of sharp. Yeah, that's a sharpish edge. Back and forth, back and forth. And at some point I need to come back and get these eyelash shadows in here. Okay. I'm thinking about this cast shadow. And just remember, as you guys are doing this, don't smudge. Work on your pencil skills. Don't be using your fingers particularly. My hand smudged this down here, and it's just, it looks awful. Don't do it. Okay, I kind of got a sharp edge right here from the highlight. And think about how these eyelashes bunch. They criss, they cross. They don't grow all in the same direction. Let's see. I'm going to move into the sclera over here just for a bit. Even though the sclera of your eye, it's white, right? You're not going to leave it white of the paper. You're still going to put down the value. I'm still seeing values right here. But just putting that in, I created so much more better form than if I just left it a flat white space. Okay, and we've got these eyelashes. Wasn't sure if I liked what my pencil was doing there. Alright. Well, I'm going to just continue this for a while until I move out to the rest of the eye, and I'm sure you guys just don't want to boringly watch me do this. I'm going to change my directions. My shading's pretty rough right here. I'm going to change my directions, go in little overlapping circles. Notice the value change from the skin to the eyeball. Skin is just a tad lighter. Alright.